Good morning, everyone. My name is Landon Strong, and I was in charge of bug fixing and programming for our project, Pestilence.
My name is Alex Baker. I was in charge of rigging, modeling, and animating the humanoids. I also did some balancing within the combat system.
Hello, my name is Matthew. I did the audio for the game, some world design, and help with balancing.
Hi, my name is Nick Manchester, and I did level design, along with modeling the game world.
Right, so to start off, we are going to click Start, and as you can see here, we have 3 different classes. Each one has certain spells it can learn. It learns at the very start, and it has a Strength and Intelligence stat, which will determine what other skills it can learn later on. They also have a Speed stat, which determines which entities go first in battle. And we'll get into a bit more detail onto how that works once we begin playing. So as you can see, we've also got chests around here, and what's special about them is you can press P to open up your menu, and you can equip certain items so long as you meet their requirements. So for instance here, I can't equip this spear because it requires strength 8, and I don't have that as a sorcerer. I only have 5 strength. But I can equip this fire staff, which takes 1 strength but 20 intelligence. So I'm going to do that, and I already equipped the fire armor, which does certain damage reduction in battle. So in the background you can hear Matthew's OST. Matthew, do you want to talk a little bit about that and the sound effects?
Yeah, so a big part of me with this game was working in FL Studio to make an original soundtrack. I kind of wanted a synthwave vibe, but also kind of a dark fantasy, so it took a while to get the right feel, but I'm happy with where it ended up. And the programming side of it was, inside the battle, there's a script to play an intro to the song, and then it leads right into the part that loops over and over for the song. And then beyond that, the other kind of programming was in the world space. The overworld has a theme, and then there's basically a twin soundtrack for the castle. So as soon as you cross over into the castle area, then the castle version will play, and I had to program that to be that seamless. But it was a lot of fun to make the soundtrack and get it to work. I'm really excited about it.
And so here we just leveled up a bit from fighting, and what's special about that is if you go into your skill menu, you see here that we now have 15 skill points. Those can be used to buy perks that will give you benefits in battle. So, also, there are tomes here in this menu that you can use to learn skills, assuming you don't know them already. And then you can use those in combat. So, did we want to talk a little bit about our level design and world design, Nick?
Sure. So the original design that was brought up as a group was a open world or like a castlescape. I opted to take a little bit of free liberty and do a terrain that is outdoor where you traverse different parts of a world, like a village, a swamp, a castle, etc. And inspiration was drawn from like the Souls games in Skyrim and whatnot. There are barriers around dead locations, such as like the edge of the world, and around pools of water. That way the player does not get trapped. Different effects were used on buildings, like you can see right now. There is a fire particle effect on the buildings. Some assets that I used were gathered from the Unity asset store, such as like the Mega Fantasy Pack and Particle Pack that Unity provides. Rocks and boulder packs, I use those a lot around the world.
Alright, and you can also see we have some animations associated with all our different enemies. Alex, did you want to talk a little bit about your process of making these?
Okay, so the animation process. Well, it's really not just an animation process, it's a whole process. So I started by making my models in ZBrush. I'm relatively new to ZBrush, but I learned how to make humanoids in it rather quickly. I ended up making these models just by using a variety of different reference images that I found. I kept their proportions generic. I was going to have clothing on these models to make them more stylish and to differentiate them more, but I had a lot of trouble getting clothing to work as I wanted to, because there are different approaches to it and different techniques, really. So I suppose, like, with clothing, that's where I want to, like, really start moving next with the modeling process. Beyond that, I also had to learn how to animate these models. Some of this process wasn't too difficult because I used Mixamo. It took a little bit of learning, but I found it to be a pretty good way to get started with modeling humanoids. Essentially, if you take a mesh that's a humanoid mesh and it's set up correctly, you can get the Mixamo site to rig and model, well, it'll rig and paint weights for you, which will then allow you to animate the model. And then as far as the animation goes, I use the Mixamo rig animation plugin, and what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to basically animate these models a bit more easily. As far as the animation process goes, I tried to keep each animation at 30 frames consistently, since a lot of actions don't really take a very long time to perform. In the future, I think that I'll focus on learning how to do frames that, like, well, animations that take a larger amount of frames, because that will enable me to make more expressive animations. But since I'm new to animation as well as modeling, that's kind of where I'm at, like, right now. I don't have, like, I basically am working on learning more things to make the animation and modeling process a bit more efficient in the future.
Right, so you might have
there are also a few other things that I did want to.
You might have just noticed just now that we had, after beating that boss, not only did they take damage from different amounts of damage from different spells, but we also got a choice of perks after beating the boss. And so those perks, what's special about them is they don't actually cost anything. So, for instance, if I wanted to now get the extra, if I started out with 20 skill points, and I was worried about picking a perk because then I might not have enough for picking a perk, after beating the boss and picking a perk, I still have 20 because those skills are basically rewards for doing well. And so, this is our second boss. It's the Paladin. And so his quirk is basically that he is super weak to Dark Void, as you'll see in a moment. But other than that, he's super strong against other attacks. And so
I see Landon's going for the big magic casting build. And so I believe how it is whenever you attack, you regain your blood and mana, right?
you regain your mana and stamina.
Yeah.
And with that, you can then do things such as heal back your health while these enemies are reacting to your attacks and trying to and if you play your cards right, you can out-heal their damage, which is good, because then you don't have to worry about... because then you don't get stun locked, which is what we were trying to avoid. We wanted to keep the player from getting stuck in a situation where they have to... where they basically have lost before they even have begun the fight. And here you can hear that the soundtrack has changed. Anything else we wanted to talk about before we fight the King's servants and the King himself?
I know, so for like the sound effects, I spent a lot of time trying to make each spell and the world kind of flow together. I have some ambient sounds to the forest, I have the torch sounds, but the spells themselves I want to pack a punch and kind of show the power. So I think I got through that a lot. And I worked a lot on this song, the King song. And I love the model of the King. Him being shiny gold, like protruding out, just like letting us. It's exactly what we're going for. It's awesome.
In all fairness, there was some interesting stuff going on with the King and the infected models. So the infected models look too much like normal people for comfort for me. I meant to make them look more zombie-like, but that didn't happen due to certain issues coming up. As far as the King goes, the King was originally supposed to have orange skin, but there were overlapping UVs that caused some certain problems with the textures appearing correctly. So I had to offer a pure gold texture, which I thought worked out in the end. Also, the King's skin and the infected skin are the same, because the joke was that the peasants that were suffering from a pandemic were the exact same dude as the King, and the King is just a peasant with a bunch of gold.
The King has his own gold attack, right? Boom! It's destroyed.
You got ruined, Delando. You got ruined.
Well, the money toss thing does 90% damage. I was hoping he'd be destroyable in that time frame.
Here, yeah, so that's the one way it can happen.
So it's a little hard to it might take too long to demonstrate, but if you beat the game, there's actually 2 different endings you can choose. One where you click enter near the crown, and that will allow you to basically pick up the crown, and you can see for yourself how it ends. Or you can try leaving the way you came, and you'll get the same result. You'll get different results. But yeah, this is basically our project. Thank you all for listening. Are there any parting words any of us would like to express?
Sure, just thank you.
It was an interesting project, and I learned a great deal about game design and character design.
Well, thank you all for attending.